Amy Clark loved the floating gardens on Nexus Prime more than anything she had ever seen in her 8 years of life. The crystal flowers sang soft melodies when the wind touched them, and the gravity pools let her jump higher than she could back. On Earth, her mother, Ambassador Lisa Clark, watched from the diplomatic terrace as Amy played with the other children from various alien species. The diplomatic gardens were supposed to be the safest place on the entire space station. Nexus Prime served as the galactic capital, where all the major alien races came together to make decisions that affected billions of worlds. Security was tighter here than anywhere else in known space, yet somehow, in the space of 10 minutes, while Lisa talked with the Zephyrian Trade Minister, Amy simply vanished. Lisa had been discussing grain shipments with Minister Cole when she realized she could no longer hear Amy's laughter. She turned to look at the garden and felt her heart stop. The other children were still playing, but Amy was nowhere to be seen. Lisa called out her daughter's name, but got no response. She ran down the steps into the garden, checking behind every crystal formation and floating platform. The Nexus Prime security team arrived. Within minutes, Captain Vextar of the Zephyrian forces took charge of the search. His crystalline body gleamed as he moved through the garden with mechanical precision. He questioned the other children, but none of them had seen where Amy went. One moment she had been chasing a group of elvish children around the singing flowers, and the next moment, she was simply gone. Dr. Kate Morgan arrived at the scene 30 minutes after the disappearance was reported. She worked as Earth's chief scientist on Nexus Prime and had become friends with Lisa over the past year. Kate brought her advanced scanning equipment and began taking readings throughout the garden. Her devices could detect trace amounts of almost any substance and track movement. Patterns that normal security scanners might miss. What Kate found made her blood run cold. There were traces of Kethfer pheromone suppressants scattered around the area where Amy had last been seen. These chemicals were used by the insectoid Kethfer race to mask scent trails and confuse tracking systems. They were not illegal, but they were unusual to find in a diplomatic garden where no Kethfer officials had been present. That day, Kate immediately shared her findings with Captain Vextar, but the Zephyrian officer seemed unconcerned. He stated that the chemicals could have been brought in on someone's clothing or equipment, and did not necessarily indicate foul play. His crystal face showed no emotion as he dismissed Kate's concerns, and suggested they continue with standard search procedures. The Elvish liaison counselor, Lyra Leymoon Whisper, arrived to offer assistance. Her silver hair flowed like liquid moonlight as she glided through the garden, examining the scene with ancient eyes that had seen centuries pass. She expressed sympathy for Lisa's situation, but suggested that human children were known for wandering off and getting lost. Amy had probably found an interesting corridor to explore, and would return when she grew hungry. Lisa felt her diplomatic training warring with her maternal instincts. Every fiber of her being screamed that something terrible had happened to her daughter, but the alien officials treated this as a routine incident. They spoke in calm, measured tones about search procedures and filing reports, while her 8-year-old child was missing. Somewhere in the vast space station, hours passed, with no sign of Amy. The initial search expanded to cover more sections of Nexus Prime, but the station was enormous, with thousands of levels and millions of rooms. Security teams from all 3 major alien races participated in the search, but their efforts seemed half-hearted and disorganized. Lisa began to suspect that they were going through the motions rather than conducting a real investigation. Kate continued her scientific analysis and discovered more disturbing evidence. The pheromone suppressants formed a trail leading away from the garden toward one of the less monitored sections of the station. When she presented this information to the search coordinators, they acknowledged it, but did not seem to consider it urgent. Captain Vextar stated that they would investigate the trail when resources became available. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to address the situation, but their response was disappointing. Counselor Thexmer of the Kethfer Consortium expressed regret about the incident, but pointed out that children went missing every day throughout the galaxy. They could not disrupt normal operations for one missing human child, especially when there was no evidence of criminal activity. Esau felt her world crashing around her. As she listened to the council's decision, they would file a formal inquiry and assign investigators to the case, but warned that such investigations typically took months to complete. In the meantime, they suggested that Lisa return to Earth and let the proper authorities handle the situation. The message was clear. Amy Clark was just one human child, and human children were not important enough to warrant emergency action. The galaxy had more pressing concerns than the disappearance of a single member of what they considered a junior species. Lisa was expected to accept this decision and move on with her diplomatic duties. Unknown to the council members, every human communication was being monitored by Earth's military intelligence network. Admiral Grace Hunter sat in her command center on Luna Base reading the reports as they came in. Her weathered face showed no emotion, but her hands clenched into fists as she absorbed the details of Amy's disappearance and the galaxy's inadequate response. Hunter had spent 40 years in Earth's military, rising through the ranks during humanity's integration into galactic society. She had watched as human interests were repeatedly dismissed by alien powers who saw Earth as a useful but ultimately expendable ally. The disappearance of Amy Clark represented everything that was wrong with the current galactic order. The Admiral activated her secure communication system and began sending coded messages to fleet commanders throughout human space. Within hours, every major Earth military installation had received her preliminary orders. The message was simple and direct. Prepare for immediate deployment. All available ships were to report ready status within 24 hours. Dr. Morgan continued her investigation despite the lack of official support. She had taken personal leave from her scientific duties to focus entirely on finding Amy. Her analysis of the pheromone trail led her deeper into the station's maintenance levels, where security coverage was minimal. The trail grew stronger as she descended, suggesting that whoever had taken Amy was not trying to hide their path from sophisticated scanners working. Alone, Kate followed the chemical trail through abandoned corridors and forgotten storage areas. The suppressants were designed to fool biological tracking, but her equipment could detect the artificial compounds easily. After 6 hours of careful searching, she made a discovery that changed everything hidden beneath. The diplomatic quarter was a facility that did not appear on any official station maps. Kate's scanners detected multiple life forms inside the structure, along with advanced shielding technology that would prevent normal security sweeps from detecting anything within the building. Was clearly designed to remain invisible to casual observation. Kate tried to access the facility, but found it protected by security systems far more advanced than anything normally seen on Nexus Prime. She immediately contacted Lisa with her findings, but when they tried to get official help, they were told that any investigation of the hidden facility would require approval from all three major alien governments. The bureaucratic maze seemed designed to prevent any real action from being taken. Lisa realized that Amy's disappearance was not being treated as a criminal matter, but as a political inconvenience that the galactic powers hoped would simply go away. The alien officials were more concerned about maintaining stability than finding one missing human chiad's night fell on Nexus Prime. Lisa sat in her quarters, staring at the communication device that connected her to Earth. She knew that if she activated it and sent a message home, there would be no turning back. The diplomatic consequences could be severe, but her daughter was missing, and the galaxy's leaders had made it clear they would not help her. Lisa opened the channel and began recording a message that would change the course of galactic history. Admiral Grace Hunter received Lisa Clark's message at 0300 hours Earth Standard Time. The recording lasted only 5 minutes, but contained enough information to justify the most dramatic military response in human history. Hunter listened to the message 3 times before activating the emergency protocols that would summon Earth's High Command to an immediate war council. The meeting convened within 2 hours in the secure bunker beneath Geneva Military Command. President Maria Santos attended via secure hologram from the orbital defense platform, while the Joint Chiefs gathered around the ancient oak table that had witnessed humanity's most crucial decisions. Hunter played Lisa's message for the assembled leaders and watched. Their faces changed from concern to anger to cold determination. Patricia Stone spoke first after the message ended. Her voice carried the weight of 30 years commanding. Earth's ground forces. Amy Clark was not just one missing child. She represented every human who had been dismissed or ignored by the galactic powers. The alien governments had made their position clear. Human lives were expendable, and human concerns were not worth their attention. Admiral Rebecca Foster, commander of the Deep Space Fleet, agreed with Stone's assessment. The galaxy had shown its true colors by refusing to help find a missing 8-year-old girl. If they would not assist in something so basic as child protection, then the entire Galactic Alliance was built on false promises. Earth had contributed resources, technology, and military support to galactic security for 50 years, but received only contempt. In return, President Santos listened to the discussion before making the decision that would reshape galactic politics. She authorized Operation Starfall, the immediate deployment of every available Earth military asset to Nexus Prime. The mission parameters were simple: retrieve Amy Clark and demonstrate to the galaxy that human lives had value even if alien governments disagreed. The mobilization began immediately. Every ship in Earth's fleet received emergency deployment orders from the massive dreadnoughts that served as mobile command centers to the smallest patrol craft that protected merchant convoys. Admiral Hunter estimated that the full fleet would be ready to depart within 18 hours, a mobilization speed that would shock the galaxy. Captain Helen Brooks received her orders while commanding the UES Defiance. On patrol near the Centauri system, her ship was Earth's newest and most powerful dreadnought, equipped with weapons systems that incorporated both human innovation and carefully studied alien technology. Brooks set course for the rally point where the entire fleet would gather before jumping to Nexus Prime. The fleet assembly was a sight that few humans had ever witnessed. 400 ships of various sizes and capabilities gathered in the empty space between star systems. The massive carriers launched fighter squadrons that filled the void with thousands of small craft, while the heavy cruisers formed defensive formations around the command vessels. Earth had never deployed so much military power in a single operation. News of the mobilization spread through Earth's colonies and allied systems within hours. Human settlements that had never seen major military vessels suddenly found entire battle groups passing through their space. Civilian traffic was redirected to allow military convoys priority access to jump points and fuel stations. The message was clear: Earth was going to war. Admiral Hunter transmitted a general message to all Earth forces explaining the situation and the mission objectives. The fleet was not deploying to conquer territory or settle political disputes. They were going to rescue one of their own and demonstrate that humanity would protect its citizens, regardless of alien opposition. Every ship captain understood that they might be facing combat against superior alien technology. The alien governments detected Earth's military buildup within hours of the fleet assembly. Zephyrian intelligence networks reported massive human ship movements, while Kethfer listening posts tracked the encrypted communications flying between Earth facilities. The scale of the deployment confused alien analysts, who could not understand why humans would risk war over a single missing child. Admiral Silvano's Starweaver contacted Captain Brooks directly as the human fleet approached the outer boundaries of Nexus Prime's star system. His ancient voice carried centuries of military experience, but also growing concern at the unprecedented human response. Starweaver had fought in dozens of galactic conflicts, but had never seen an entire species mobilize for one individual. Brooks responded to Starweaver's communication with words that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. The Elvish Admiral had asked if Earth was truly willing to risk galactic war over one child. Brooks replied that Starweaver did not understand the fundamental difference between human and alien thinking. Amy Clark was not just one child, She was one of their children, and humans protected their own. The conversation was recorded and transmitted throughout the galaxy within hours. Alien leaders who had dismissed the human deployment as political posturing began to realize that Earth was completely serious about using military force. Captain Brooks had spoken with absolute conviction that left no room for negotiation or compromise. Queen Excala of the Kethver Consortium attempted to defuse the situation by offering to conduct their own investigation into Amy's disappearance. The insectoid ruler promised that her people would search every Kethver facility on Nexus Prime and provide regular updates to Earth authorities. The offer was clearly intended to buy time and avoid military confrontation. Brooks rejected the Queen's proposal without hesitation. Earth had already requested help from the galactic authorities and been ignored. The time for investigations and diplomatic solutions had passed. Human forces would locate Amy Clark themselves using whatever methods proved necessary. The Kethver could either assist or stay out of the way. The Sephorian Empire responded to Earth's approach by mobilizing their own fleet to defend. Nexus Prime crystal ships began emerging from hyperspace around the galactic capital, forming defensive formations that had protected the station for centuries. The Zephyrians believed their superior technology and defensive positions would deter any human attack. Admiral Hunter received intelligence reports about the alien fleet movements, but did not alter her deployment plans. Earth's ships continued toward Nexus Prime on schedule, while military analysts studied the defensive preparations. The human fleet was outnumbered, but Admiral Hunter had advantages that the aliens did not understand. Human military doctrine emphasized speed, flexibility, and overwhelming force at decisive points, while alien strategies relied on technological superiority and defensive positions. Earth's commanders had studied alien tactics for decades, while the galactic powers had never faced a determined human assault. The coming battle would test whether humans' determination could overcome alien advantages. President Santos made a final diplomatic gesture by broadcasting a message to the entire galaxy explaining Earth's position. A human child had disappeared under suspicious circumstances, and the galactic authorities had refused to provide adequate assistance. Earth was therefore exercising its sovereign right to protect its citizens using military force if necessary. The broadcast included detailed information about Amy's disappearance, the evidence of Kethver involvement, and the inadequate response from Nexus Prime Security. Santos challenged any alien government to explain why a missing 8-year-old did not deserve immediate action from the galaxy's law enforcement agencies. The message ended with a simple ultimatum addressed to whoever had taken Amy Clark: return the child unharmed within 12 hours, or face the consequences of their actions. Earth would not negotiate with kidnappers or accept excuses from incompetent authorities. The countdown had begun, and the galaxy would learn what happened when humans were pushed to Pharrellian leaders watched the human fleet approach Nexus Prime. With growing alarm, the ships moved in perfect formation, showing a level of military discipline that impressed even veteran commanders. Radio intercepts revealed human units communicating in calm professional tones, despite approaching what could become the largest space battle in galactic history. Captain Brooks stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the alien defensive positions grow larger on her tactical displays. Her crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing weapon systems and defensive screens while monitoring communications from the other human ships. The entire fleet was ready for combat, but hoping that their show of force would be enough. The final approach to Nexus Prime began with Admiral Hunter transmitting one last message to the galactic authorities. Earth's fleet had come to retrieve Amy Clark, and would use whatever force proved necessary to accomplish that mission. The alien governments had 12 hours to produce the missing child, or watch their capital fall to human forces. As the countdown began, the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if diplomacy could prevent a war that would change everything. The 12-hour ultimatum expired at exactly 1400 hours, Galactic Standard Time, with no response from the alien authorities. Amy Clark remained missing, and the Galactic Powers had chosen to test human resolve. Captain Helen Brooks received the attack authorization from Admiral Hunter, and immediately began the assault that would be remembered as the Battle of Nexus. Prime human fighters launched from their carriers in waves that blotted out the stars. The small craft moved in unpredictable patterns that confused alien targeting systems, while heavy cruisers began bombardment of the outer defensive positions. Zephyrian crystal ships returned fire with energy weapons that could shatter planets, but the human fleet refused to retreat. Battle unfolded in 3 dimensions around the massive space station as ships maneuvered through asteroid fields and debris clouds that surrounded. Nexus Prime human commanders used tactics that the aliens had never encountered before, striking from multiple directions simultaneously and withdrawing before defensive fire could concentrate on their positions. Elvish Admiral Sylvanos Starweaver commanded the combined alien fleet from his flagship, the Moonlight Eternal. His centuries of military experience had prepared him for conventional space combat, but the humans fought with a ferocity that defied rational analysis. They accepted casualties that would cause other species to retreat and continued attacking even when facing impossible odds. The human assault focused on disabling defensive systems rather than destroying them completely. Captain Brooks had ordered her commanders to minimize civilian casualties and preserve the station's infrastructure. This restraint confused the alien defenders, who expected humans to fight with the same calculated precision that characterized most galactic warfare. Commander Alan Nightbreeze led the Elvish fighter squadrons in desperate attempts to stop the human advance. Her pilots were skilled beyond measure, with reflexes honed by centuries of training, but they found themselves overwhelmed by human pilots who seemed willing to sacrifice everything to achieve their objectives. The humans fought like their lives depended on victory. Within 2 hours, the outer defensive ring had fallen to human assault forces. Captain Sandra Wells led the boarding parties that captured key defensive platforms, while specialized human units disabled the energy shields protecting the station itself. The coordinated attack demonstrated a level of military planning that impressed even hostile alien observers. Colonel Rebecca Stone commanded the ground assault forces that would take control of Nexus Prime itself. Her 10,000 Marines launched from assault transports and armored drop pods that penetrated the station's defensive screens. Through sheer determination and overwhelming numbers, the Marines had trained for urban combat in alien environments for years. The fighting inside Nexus Prime was fierce, but brief. Human forces moved through the corridors with precision that came from detailed intelligence gathering and careful planning. Every squad knew their objectives and had backup plans for multiple contingencies. The aliens found themselves facing opponents who had studied their weaknesses for decades. Dr. Kate Morgan accompanied the assault forces with special authorization from Admiral Hunter. Her mission was to continue the investigation into Amy's disappearance. While the military secured the station, Kate carried advanced scanning equipment and had a team of specialists who could analyze any evidence they discovered during the battle. The battle reached its climax when human forces surrounded the central government complex, where the Galactic Council maintained their headquarters. Alien leaders barricaded themselves inside while their security forces attempted to hold defensive positions. Against overwhelming human assault, the outcome was never in doubt. Captain Brooks transmitted a message to the trapped alien officials, offering them safe passage off the station if they surrendered immediately. The alternative was a direct assault on the government complex that would likely result in significant casualties. The choice belonged to the galactic leaders, who had ignored a missing human child. Counselor Vexmar of the Kethver Consortium was the first to accept human terms. The insectoid official transmitted his surrender and requested immediate evacuation from Nexus Prime. Other alien leaders followed within minutes, as they realized that continued resistance would only increase the destruction and casualties. The surrender of Nexus Prime was formalized at 1800 hours, when the Last alien military units laid down their weapons. Colonel Stone accepted the surrender on behalf of Earth while maintaining control of all critical facilities. The galactic capital had fallen to human forces in exactly 4 hours of combat. Hunter arrived on Nexus Prime within hours of the surrender to personally oversee the investigation into Amy's disappearance. Her first action was to authorize Dr. Morgan's team to search every facility on the station, regardless of diplomatic immunity or political considerations. The search for Amy would continue until she was found. The fall of Nexus Prime sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Alien governments that had dismissed human military capabilities suddenly faced the reality that Earth had conquered the galactic capital in a single afternoon. The balance of power had shifted dramatically, and no one knew what would happen next. Captain Brooks established martial law on Nexus Prime with human forces controlling all essential services and security operations. The alien civilian population was protected, but had to accept human authority until the situation stabilized. Most aliens complied with human directives while trying to understand how their world had changed so quickly. Morgan's investigation team made rapid progress once they had unrestricted access to the station. Her advanced scanners detected the hidden facility beneath the diplomatic quarter that had been concealed from previous searches. The structure was heavily shielded and clearly designed to remain invisible to normal security sweeps. Major Sandra Wells led the assault team that breached the hidden facility and discovered evidence that would change everything. Inside they found documentation of an extensive criminal network that had been operating under the protection of corrupt galactic officials. The facility contained records of dozens of missing children from various species. The discovery of the child trafficking network explained why the galactic authorities had been reluctant to investigate Amy's disappearance. A thorough search would have exposed the criminal conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of alien governments. The corruption extended far beyond simple bribery to include active participation in the kidnapping and sale of children. Admiral Hunter immediately ordered the evidence transmitted to every major news network in the galaxy. The documentation proved that missing children from supposedly primitive species had been taken for decades. While galactic authorities covered up the crimes, the alien governments had not just ignored Amy's disappearance. They had been complicit in the system that took her. The revelation of the trafficking network caused political upheaval throughout alien space. Populations that had trusted their governments for centuries suddenly learned that their leaders had been protecting child kidnappers. The protests began within hours of the evidence being released and quickly spread to every major alien world. Queen Sixkala of the Kethver Consortium faced particular scrutiny since the evidence clearly showed that members of her species had organized much of the trafficking operation. The Queen initially denied knowledge of the crimes, but eventually agreed to cooperate with human investigators in exchange for protection from her own angry population. The Elvish Dominion experienced similar political chaos when evidence emerged showing that High Counselor Thalanil Goldleaf had accepted bribes to ignore missing Elvish children. The ancient government that had ruled for millennia suddenly found itself facing revolution from citizens who demanded justice for the victims. The Zeph Empire managed to maintain stability only by immediately executing several high-ranking officials who had been involved in the trafficking network. The crystal beings valued order above all else and moved quickly to distance themselves from the criminal conspiracy. Human forces continued to expand their control over Nexus Prime while maintaining order and protecting civilian populations. The occupation was conducted with professional discipline that surprised alien observers who had expected human troops to behave like conquerors. Instead, they found themselves under the protection of soldiers who seemed genuinely concerned about their welfare. Captain Brooks established a military government that focused on essential services and security, while the investigation into Amy's disappearance continued. The human commander made it clear that Earth's forces would remain on Nexus Prime until Amy was found, and the criminal network responsible for her kidnapping was completely Galaxy watched nervously as human ships continued to arrive at Nexus Prime, reinforcing the occupation force and preparing for potential counterattacks from alien governments. Admiral Hunter had effectively declared war on the entire galactic establishment by seizing their capital, and the consequences were still unfolding as the first day of human occupation ended. Dr. Morgan's team analyzed the evidence from the hidden facility and prepared to follow the trail that would lead them to Amy Clark. The real hunt was just beginning, and the galaxy would soon learn what happened when humans were determined to protect their children. Dr. Kate Morgan worked through the night, analyzing evidence from the hidden facility beneath Nexus Prime. Her team had discovered detailed records of the trafficking network, including transport schedules, shipping manifests, and financial transactions. That painted a horrifying picture of organized child kidnapping. The trail lead directly to the Kethfer homeworld of Zixthor. Admiral Grace Hunter reviewed the evidence with growing anger. The documentation showed that the Stellar Child Exchange had been operating for over 30 years, taking children from species considered primitive or expendable by the galactic elite. Amy Clark was just the latest victim in a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of alien governments. Queen sat in detention aboard the human command ship, answering questions from military interrogators. The insectoid ruler had initially claimed ignorance of the trafficking operation, but the evidence against her species was overwhelming. She finally agreed to provide full cooperation in exchange for protection from human justice. The Queen revealed that Amy had been taken to a private estate on Zixtera, owned by a wealthy Kethfer noble named Tekfar. The collector. The criminal maintained a private zoo of exotic specimens, including children from various species, who were displayed for the entertainment of wealthy visitors. Major Sandra Wells received orders to prepare an immediate rescue mission to the Kethfer homeworld. Her special operations team had been training for hostile environment insertions since the beginning of the crisis. The mission would take them deep into alien territory, where they could expect fierce resistance from Kethfer military forces. The Kethfer homeworld was heavily defended with orbital platforms and patrol fleets that could challenge even human military technology. Admiral Hunter decided to deploy a full battle group to support the rescue mission, rather than risk failure with a small covert operation. Amy's life was worth any military cost. Commander Lynn Foster led the advanced scouts, who would infiltrate Zixtera ahead of the main assault force. Her team specialized in deep reconnaissance and had studied Kethver military procedures. For years they would locate Amy's exact position and gather intelligence on the estate's defenses before the rescue began. The journey to Zixtera took 18 hours through hyperspace, during which human forces prepared for what could become a major battle. The Kethver had mobilized their fleet to defend their homeworld, but Admiral Hunter was determined to retrieve Amy, regardless of the military opposition. Dar Morgan accompanied the rescue force with specialized equipment designed to track human biological signatures. Even if Amy was moved or hidden, the scanners could detect traces of human DNA from considerable distances. The technology had been developed for search and rescue operations in hostile environments. The assault on Zixtera began at dawn, local time, with human fighters sweeping aside the outer patrol craft while heavy cruisers engaged the orbital defense platforms. The Kethver fought desperately to protect their homeworld, but found themselves facing the same overwhelming human determination that had conquered Nexus Prime. Foster's reconnaissance team had located Tekfar's estate in the northern continent, where the noble maintained his private collection. The facility was heavily guarded, but isolated from major population centers, which would allow human forces to operate without endangering Kethver civilians. The estate covered several square kilometers and included multiple buildings connected by underground tunnels. Tekfar had invested enormous resources and security systems and defensive measures that would challenge even elite human special forces. The rescue team would need every advantage to succeed. Major Wells led the assault team that dropped directly onto the estate's grounds, while human air support suppressed the defensive positions. The HFY guards fought with desperate courage, but were overwhelmed by superior human tactics and overwhelming firepower. Dr. Morgan's scanners detected multiple human signatures within the main collection building, along with biological traces from dozens of other species. The facility was much larger than expected, and contained far more victims than anyone had anticipated. Amy was not the only child who needed rescue. The assault team fought their way through the complex building by building while searching for the victims. The collection included children from at least 20 different species, some of whom had been missing for years. HFY had been operating as criminal enterprise for decades, while galactic authorities ignored the disappearances. Commander Foster's team found Amy in a luxurious but secure room on the third floor of the main building. The 8-year-old girl was frightened but unharmed, having been treated as a valuable specimen rather than subjected to abuse. HFY had apparently planned to display her to visitors as an example of rare human euthemy, recognized Foster's human features, and ran to her immediately, while speaking rapidly about the other children who were being held in similar rooms throughout the complex. The rescue became a liberation mission, as human forces discovered victim after victim of the trafficking network. Corporal Michelle Davis served as the team's medical specialist and immediately began treating the rescued children. Many had been traumatized by their captivity, while others showed signs of malnutrition or neglect. The youngest victims were barely old enough to speak, while the oldest had been missing for several years. The liberation of HFY's collection revealed the true scope of the galactic trafficking conspiracy. Children from dozens of species had been taken and sold to wealthy collectors throughout the galaxy. Some were displayed as exotic pets, while others were used in illegal experiments or forced into various forms of service. Sergeant Diana Ross coordinated the evacuation of the rescued children, while human medics provided emergency treatment for those in critical condition. The operation required careful handling, since many of the children had never seen humans before and were terrified of their alien appearance. Dr. Morgan documented the entire facility and collected evidence that would expose the full extent of the criminal network. The estate contained records of transactions with buyers throughout the galaxy, including detailed information about other collection sites and trafficking routes. The rescue operation succeeded in liberating over 200 children from various species, but also revealed that HFY's estate was just one node in a vast criminal enterprise. The evidence suggested that similar facilities existed throughout the galaxy, protected by corruption and official indifference. Admiral Hunter received reports of the successful rescue, while human forces completed their conquest of the HFY orbital defenses. The liberation of Amy Clark had accomplished its primary objective, but also exposed a conspiracy that threatened the children of every species in the galaxy. The rescued children were transported to human medical facilities, where specialists began the long process of rehabilitation and family reunification. Many had been missing for so long that their families had given up hope, while others came from species that had never reported the disappearances to galactic authorities. Amy Clark was reunited with her mother, Ambassador Lisa Clark, aboard the human flagship, while medical teams confirmed that she had not been seriously harmed. The 8-year-old girl was remarkably resilient, but would need time to recover from her traumatic experience. The liberation footage was transmitted throughout the galaxy, showing human soldiers gently carrying children of every species to safety. The images of human medics treating alien children with the same care they would show their own offspring had a profound impact on galactic public opinion. Alien populations that had been suspicious of human military action began to understand why Earth had been willing to risk war for one missing child. The rescue of hundreds of victims from dozens of species proved that human determination to protect the innocent extended beyond their own species. Captain Brooks received orders to prepare for the return journey to Nexus Prime, where the evidence from HFY's estate would be analyzed, and the rescued children would begin their journey home. The mission had succeeded beyond all expectations, but also revealed that much work remained to be done. The galaxy watched as human ships departed Zixthera, carrying the liberated children toward uncertain futures. Many had been missing for so long that finding their families would require extensive investigation, while others came from species that might not welcome their return. Dar Morgan began the complex process of identifying the rescued children and tracing their origins back to their home worlds. The work would take months or even years, but represented the beginning of justice for the victims of the galactic trafficking conspiracies. The rescue fleet returned to Nexus Prime. Admiral Hunter prepared for the next phase of Earth's response to the crisis. The successful liberation of Amy Clark and the other children had proven human military capabilities, but the real challenge would be restructuring galactic society to prevent future tragedies. The evidence from Tekvar's estate would bring down governments throughout the galaxy but also create opportunities for positive change. Human forces now controlled the galactic capital and had the moral authority to demand reforms that would protect children of every species from exploitation. The return of the rescued children to Nexus Prime created a media sensation that reverberated throughout the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of species arrived to claim children who had been missing for years, while journalists documented emotional reunions that proved the scope of the trafficking conspiracy. Ambassador Lisa Clark stood before the reformed Galactic Council holding her daughter Amy's hand as she addressed the assembled representatives. Her speech was broadcast live to every inhabited world in the galaxy and would be remembered as the moment when the old order finally ended. Lisa spoke without notes or diplomatic language as she described the failure of galactic institutions to protect the most vulnerable members of society. The trafficking network had operated for decades while government officials took bribes to ignore the disappearances of children from species they considered expendable. The evidence from Tekvar's estate had already brought down 3 major governments. The Elvish Dominion was in chaos after revelations that High Counselor Thalanil Goldleaf had protected traffickers in exchange for political favors. The ancient elf faced execution by his own people, while protesters demanded complete governmental reform. The Cathvar Consortium had collapsed entirely when Queen Zixgala was forced to admit that members of her royal family had organized much of the trafficking operation. The insectoid species was fragmenting into competing factions while trying to distance themselves from the criminal conspiracy. Only the Zephrarian Empire had managed to maintain stability by immediately executing everyone involved in the trafficking network and implementing harsh reforms to prevent future corruption. The crystal beings valued order above all else and moved quickly to align themselves with human demands for justice. Admiral Grace Hunter addressed the reformed council after Lisa's speech. Her military uniform contrasted sharply with the ornate robes worn by alien diplomats, but her words carried the authority of someone who had just conquered the galactic capital. In defense of a single child, Hunter presented the galaxy with a simple choice: accept Earth's leadership in creating a new galactic order dedicated to protecting the innocent, or watch as humanity withdrew from galactic society entirely. The Admiral made it clear that Earth would not remain part of a system that allowed children to be sold like merchandise. New galactic charter established human oversight of all law enforcement activities, with Captain Helen Brooks appointed as security chief of Nexus Prime. Dr. Kate Morgan became the first director of Galactic Child Protection Services, a new agency with authority to investigate suspected trafficking anywhere in known space. The reforms went far beyond simple law enforcement changes. The new council required that every member species contribute resources to child protection efforts, while establishing severe penalties for any official who ignored evidence of trafficking. Corruption would no longer be tolerated at any level of government. President Maria Santos arrived at Nexus Prime to sign the new galactic charter that would govern relations between species for generations to come. The document established human moral authority over issues involving the protection of children while maintaining the sovereignty of individual species in other matters. The signing ceremony was held in the same garden where Amy Clark had disappeared just weeks earlier. The symbolic location reminded everyone present of how the crisis had begun with one missing child and ended with the complete restructuring of Galactic Civilization. Colonel Rebecca Stone established the new Galactic Security Force with human officers, working alongside carefully vetted aliens from species that had proven their commitment to justice. The mixed patrols began operating immediately throughout Nexus Prime and would eventually expand to other worlds. The rescued children became symbols of hope for a better future as they recovered from their traumatic experiences. Many chose to remain on Nexus Prime, where human medical facilities provided the best treatment available, while others returned to their home worlds. With ongoing support from human specialist, Sammy Clark adapted quickly to her new fame as the child whose disappearance had changed galactic history. She seemed unaware that her kidnapping had triggered a war, and focused instead on helping other rescued children adjust to their freedom. The rehabilitation centers established by Dr. Morgan became models for trauma treatment throughout the galaxy. Human specialists shared their knowledge with alien medical professionals while developing new techniques for helping kidnapping victims recover from their experiences. The economic impact of the galactic restructuring was enormous, as corrupt networks that had operated for centuries were dismantled and their assets redistributed to victim compensation funds. The wealth stolen from trafficking operations funded new protection programs and enforcement agencies. Captain Brooks implemented security measures throughout Nexus Prime that would prevent future trafficking operations. Advanced scanning systems monitored all transportation, while AI programs analyzed communication patterns for evidence of criminal activity. The galactic capital became the safest place for children in known space. The first annual report from Galactic Child Protection Services documented the rescue of over 5,000 children from trafficking networks throughout the galaxy. The success rate exceeded all expectations as human determination, combined with alien cooperation to dismantle criminal organizations. Dr. Morgan's scientific analysis of the trafficking evidence led to the discovery of hidden facilities on dozens of worlds. Many had operated for generations, while local authorities ignored obvious signs of criminal activity. The new enforcement teams liberated thousands more victims from captivity. The political transformation of the galaxy continued for months, as populations demanded accountability from leaders who had failed to protect their children's species after species. Elected new governments that promised cooperation with human reform efforts, while rejecting the corruption of the old system. Admiral Hunter maintained Earth's military presence throughout the galaxy to ensure compliance with the new regulations, while gradually transferring enforcement responsibilities to reformed local governments. The message was clear that backsliding would not be tolerated. The cultural impact of the crisis extended far beyond politics, as species throughout the galaxy began adopting human values regarding the protection of children. Educational exchanges brought alien students to Earth, while human teachers traveled to other worlds to share their knowledge. Amy Clark grew up to become a symbol of positive change, as the child whose disappearance had led to the greatest reform movement in galactic history. She eventually joined Galactic Child Protection Services as an adult, and dedicated her life to ensuring that no other child would suffer, as she had the Memorial Garden on Nexus Prime became a place of pilgrimage for families affected by trafficking, as they came to remember victims and celebrate survivors. The garden featured plants from every inhabited world in the galaxy, symbolizing the unity that had emerged from tragedy. Lisa Clark continued serving as ambassador, but found her role transformed from diplomatic representative to moral leader, as she worked to strengthen the bonds between species that had emerged from the crisis. Her experience as a mother searching for her missing child gave her unique authority in discussions of justice and protection. The new Nexus Prime became a center of learning and cooperation, as species that had once viewed each other with suspicion began working together on shared challenges. The city attracted the best minds from throughout the galaxy, who wanted to contribute to the ongoing reform efforts. 10 years after Amy's rescue, the galaxy had been transformed into something unrecognizable from the corrupt system that had allowed children to be sold as commodities. The new order was not perfect, but it was built on the fundamental principle that every child deserved protection regardless of their species or origin. The story of Amy Clark became required learning in schools throughout the galaxy as children learned about the courage required to stand up for justice and the importance of protecting those who could not protect themselves. The tale reminded each new generation that even the smallest voice could change the universe. Captain Brooks often walked through the memorial garden with her own children, explaining how one 8-year-old girl had taught the galaxy the true meaning of civilization. Amy's disappearance had ended the age of corruption and begun an era of justice that would protect children for generations to come. The final chapter of the crisis came when Amy Clark returned to the same garden where she had been kidnapped, now as an adult with children of her own. The circle was complete as the next generation played safely in a place that had been transformed from a site of tragedy into a symbol of hope. As Amy watched her own daughter play with children from a dozen different species, she reflected on how her childhood trauma had led to the creation of a better galaxy. The protection of all children had become the foundation of galactic civilization and would remain so for all time.